follow that. So we've got Tanya Martin from Women in Sport.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here today and just to be surrounded by so many people that are interested in this space. I kind of feel my job's already been done for me, partially by Rachel in her fantastic opening and using so much of our work in that, but also exactly the kind of things that you've just been saying as well. Just a little bit about Women in Sport. So we are a national charity. We were founded in 1984, so we'll be celebrating our 40th birthday next year. I invite you all to come. But essentially we are a gender equality charity, so we very much work on understanding the needs and aspirations of women and girls and how that relates to sport and exercise, but also their wider lives within society. And we have a very, very strong belief that, you know, all women and girls deserve the access and equality to healthy, happy, active lives, whether that's through organised formal sport or kind of active travel, exercise, fitness, whatever it might be, because that gives women and girls the much needed joy and freedom, actually, from a lot of the other things that we are dealing with as a demographic within society. So for us, we fundamentally believe it's wrong to deny women and girls access to parks and open spaces, and any space, in fact, that enables women and girls to live that kind of healthy, active lives. So our vision is that nobody should be excluded from the joy and lifelong fulfilment of sport and exercise. And the way that we do that is through sector-leading insight. So we do a huge amount of insight work in really understanding the needs of women and girls, both in their wider lives, but also in relation to sport and exercise. We also do a lot of innovation work, so we work with a lot of organisations, and I've worked with Make Space for Girls before and other organisations to kind of try and drive solutions, real sustainable solutions that can change the landscape for women and girls. We also do a lot of campaigning and a lot of policy work as well, so really trying to speak to the women and girls that we work with all the time and really trying to influence them to feel confident to claim that space and take that confidence back, actually, to say, yes, this is my right and I will access it. But as I said, a lot of policy work as well in terms of trying to drive gender equity within sport and exercise in particular, but also in wider society. So our kind of long-term aim is that we really want to create a lasting change for women and girls in society, both through sport, but also within sport. And we do believe that that is achievable. And I think we kind of all understand the value of being active outdoors and being outdoors generally. We know it's fantastic for our health and well-being. We absolutely know that. But I think we as a society have to challenge much more the right to sport and exercise specifically for women and girls. You know, sport and exercise has been a very male-dominated domain for many, many years. And we have been trying to break that down consistently over our kind of history as a charity. But I think generally as a society we place really low value, actually, on the exercise and sporting experiences of women and girls and what it can actually bring them. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier in terms of joy and freedom. It can bring so much joy and freedom to women and girls' lives to be active, but we know that so many women and girls are denied that through a whole host of reasons. And I think for us it starts very, very early on. In the primary years we've got really, really deep gender stereotyping already happening at the ages of kind of 3, 4 and 5. And I think you spoke to a little bit of that earlier, Rachel, in terms of, you know, already at that very, very young age, we're seeing big discrepancies in girls' self-belief and their confidence. And actually, we know that sport and physical activity and exercise can really be a tool to combat that and kind of start all boys and girls on a level playing field. But again, we know even in the primary years, boys dominate sport and exercise spaces and outdoor spaces, and girls feel pushed aside. And that's starting from very, very early. But the cumulative impact that has across the lifespan is devastating, if you look at it. You know, in primary years, we're starting with really, really low confidence. Girls then move into the teenage years and are suffering with extreme mental health issues in a lot of cases, particularly in this more digital world that we live in now, that teenage girls are really centred in. Then we go through into kind of adulthood and think about all of the burdens and the pressures that come with being an older woman and having children and family, and how that restricts our joy and freedom in the world as well. And then moving all the way through to later life. You know, women who aren't active early are facing osteoporosis and gendered health inequalities when they reach later life. So getting it right early, at a very early age, from primary right through to teenage and beyond, is so important to making sure that women can lead really healthy and active lives and enjoy that kind of much needed freedom that I talked about. Last year we did our very first piece of work in terms of outdoor space and what that means for girls in particular. As a charity, we have strategically been looking at the life stage of the teenage years in particular over the past 4 or 5 years, because we know that in the teenage years, as Rachel pointed out earlier, that's where we see the biggest disengagement from teenage girls in terms of sport and physical activity. We know that around 43% of girls who once considered themselves sporty when they were kind of in their primary years disengage by the time they get to the teenage years, through a whole host of reasons, again, that Rachel pointed out in terms of around confidence, but also judgment and things like that. And in the work that we did last year with the Yorkshire Sport Foundation, we looked at 3 specific parks in Yorkshire to understand how girls were using those spaces. And interestingly, when we asked them how active they were, only 2 in 10 of the girls that we surveyed said they were active regularly, compared to 4 in 10 boys. But 7 in 10 of those girls wanted to be more active. And one way that you can do that is through the use of parks and outdoor spaces in particular. And I think the biggest thing that came from me from that study was only 34% of the girls that we surveyed enjoyed doing sport and exercise in open spaces and parks, compared to 63% of boys. They feel completely pushed out of those open park spaces, partly due to safety, but also other issues as well. And that's the kind of really key things we've got to look at addressing. How do we really give girls that joy and freedom that we know they need in the teenage years, that can really serve them in terms of their mental health and well-being? But how do we create more inclusive spaces for that to happen, where boys are not just naturally dominating those spaces and girls are feeling completely kind of excluded? And I think in terms of that research we did last year, again, some of the key kind of messages that came through for us is that actually what the outdoors does is amplify the existing barriers that we know are already there in terms of sport and exercise. So 31% of girls said they didn't feel safe in their local park. But actually, when we said, how does that change when you factor exercise and sport into the equation, that jumped to 49% of girls. Because actually, it's not just about the physical safety, which is massively important, but it's the emotional safety as well. Because girls and women are judged for being active. They're judged for being sporty, and that is what we have to change as well. It's the emotional safety as much as it is the practical safety and the behaviour of men and boys and how that contributes to that.
Thank you.
Thanks.